You are listening to the Knightline Sports Network, brought to you by Travis Dever and the Dever team, 386-690-1636.
Knightline is brought to you by the Dever team, your source for New Smyrna Beach real estate and everything else New Smyrna Beach. Go to www.thedeverteam.com and call UCF alumni Travis Dever for all your New Smyrna Beach needs. 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636.
Welcome to UCF Knightline, your source for UCF sports and former player information.
All right, hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley coming to you from the 1148 studios, and this is Knightline 241 from the award-winning Knightline Sports Network. Joining me as always,
Roger Phipps, and on this week's show, the Coogs were caged. What do you do, brother, when the defense is coming for you? Leadership in the locker room, staff and players, by the numbers, pole position, game stats, FIW Fodder, Roger's 5-star alarm hot take, Knightros Deep Thought, Inside the Huddle with Kyle Israel, Making the Grade, and your questions in Ask Knightline.
All right, well, that was a heck of a Hulk Hogan voice there. I really, I'm excited about that. That was really good, Roger.
Every once in a while, I keep people on their toes.
I thought Hulk Hogan had joined all of a sudden. From,
well, what magically. You didn't see is I was ripping my shirt off, Hulk Hogan style while I was saying that.
Oh, boy. We didn't need to hear that. TMI, my friend, TMI. All right, 44.
As long as you didn't see it.
Exactly. All right, 44-21 win over Houston, 681 yards versus 689 yards of offense last week and 2 turnovers on D. That's good. It's good.
It's really good. It's smoking hot, man.
Yeah, well, what a defense. I will say that. I guess we should probably start on this from the beginning. Let's just jump right into it. I figured this would I think we had it later on in the show, but we're going to go for it right now because I think that this is the most important thing that we can talk about, and I think everybody wants to hear people talk about it and give their opinions. So here we go. Anton Collier, one of my favorite players on the team, and I've said that for a long time. Always loved the way the guy plays the game. He plays the game kind of like I did when I played the game, a little bit of reckless abandon, even though he plays it probably at a little higher level than I did, just because he's better than me. But one of the kind of type of player that doesn't care. Will do some crazy stuff, get burnt every once in a while because of what he was trying to do, but also will lay the smack down. Another WWE reference right there. But he made a really bad decision this last week on Thursday night. If you haven't heard, I don't know where you've been if you haven't heard this, but it's not like it's breaking news here. But he was caught with a concealed firearm in a car that was his, that he was driving without a license, without the license for the car, without a license to drive, or the license for a concealed weapon. When that happens, you go to jail. One of the two of those things, either one of the two of those things would have gotten most people in jail. No difference when you have a concealed firearm, whether you're a UCF football player or you're not. I don't care what school you play for. I don't care what you're doing. You do not get caught carrying a concealed weapon without a conceal and carry permit. You just don't. So, 3 other guys were in the car with him. Brandon Moore was one of them. Eric Mitchell was another one, and Aaron Robinson was the other one. No charges for the rest of those guys in the car. And then there was a group that followed behind them that got involved as well from the sidewalk. And a lot of things were said that shouldn't have been said to the police. And it was a really, really big deal. You can find the police tapes, the body cam footage out there and make a decision for yourself how you think that it all went down and see the facts of how it went down. But I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. I don't like it that our team is even going through things like this. This stuff should not be happening with players on a football team, period. And especially not at UCF, especially not in our program, where we try to be, we're trying to get on the national stage with positive things and winning football games and, talking a lot and all that stuff. This kind of stuff hurts not only the program, not only the players, but the fans as well, as far as I'm concerned. Just not good all the way around. Probably ruined Antoine Collier's career as a college football player. He probably won't be back, as far as, my knowledge of it. I don't think that he'll be back. I don't think that as a program you would welcome someone back that got arrested for something like that. Normally it doesn't happen unless you're Miami or some team like that. So, and there's probably a couple other guys that probably shouldn't come back as well. Not any of the ones in the car with Antoine Collier, but a couple of guys on the sidewalk that were talking, smack to the cops. One of them in particular, and I'll say his name, Kenny Turnier. Kenny Turnier should probably never play another down for UCF football. If you go and watch those tapes and listen to the things that he said to the police officers and the way that he was acting as a representative of UCF football and of the school UCF, that all kinds of kids are going to see this video. Recruits are going to see this video. And he said something along the lines of, I'll tell everybody not to come to UCF because this is the way that they'll treat us. He didn't say it in a nice way like that, though. But things like that should not happen at UCF, especially, think about it real quickly here. And I know that I'm going on this long monologue. I apologize. I'm just trying to get all this out before I forget what I wanted to say. And I just forgot what I wanted to say, but that's okay.
Well, you've said a lot already.
Yeah, it was just a bad look for the program. Very, very disappointing. The good thing about it, I guess, is that we found some guys on the defense that really stepped up and played very well this weekend.
You ain't lying. I mean, they certainly picked up, and I think it's probably our second best defensive game overall. First being Tulane, which we missed the recap last week, but from a yards perspective, etc. Last week they played really well as well. But having these guys, 4 out of your starting defensive rotation being out, and then thrusting freshman and sophomore in there, they handled themselves really, really well, and was extremely happy with the outcome for sure.
Yeah. So did you get to see any of the video, the police body cam video from the situation?
Yeah, I did. Unfortunately, I did watch it. A few thoughts from my seat. One, you're right. Nobody, especially in a position like they are, to be playing and being representatives of the university, one, in a COVID type of environment right now.
Yeah, I didn't even mention that part.
It's not a smart move.
I didn't even mention that.
Well, it's not
part.
a smart. Yeah, it's not a smart move to be out at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, because you could potentially bring something back to your teammates as the travel team's coming out.
The night before you leave on the airplane to go to Houston, out until 2:30. This happened at 2:30 or 2:40 in the morning. It's just
I mean, when you think about it, that could cause a football game to be canceled. So not only is it bad for yourself, it's bad for your teammates, but it's also could cost the university revenue as well.
Yeah, in the COVID situation especially. I mean, I didn't even bring up that part. That part is important as well. The other thing that I wanted to say that I forgot, as far as Tournier being nasty to the cops. He wasn't the only one. There was others over there as well. But he was the main one that just never shut up, which he should have. Somebody should have told him to shut up. One of his teammates should have, in my opinion. The thing is, these are the same officers that, ride in the what do you call it when they're in the bus and they're taking them to the stadium and between games and stuff like that. Yeah, these are the same escorts. These are the same cops that are escorting them around the campus and protecting the entire campus, to be honest with you. Not only the football players, but these are the same exact cops that are involved in stuff like that. And these guys were just ruthless talking to them. The cops did a wonderful job. You can see it in the video. They were very respectful. They were just trying to chill the whole situation out and get it under control. So I don't know. It's just I've been kind of depressed all weekend, to be honest with you. First of all, on Thursday, I guess maybe it was Friday by the time this came out, I just started thinking, I'm like, oh my God, what is going to happen to our football team if we don't have these guys? It's going to be horrible. Oh my God, we're losing 4 defensive starters. Oh my God, our defense already sucked, basically. That's it. It's over. That's what I texted somebody and I said, we're screwed. This is, it's going to be horrible. Thank goodness it wasn't. But, oh man, I hate this for our program. We've already had
this for Antoine as well. I mean, the other part about this is, all of us have made mistakes as kids, right? It's a pretty serious mistake to have weapons in your car.
He's an adult. He's 23 years old. He's 23 years old. That's an adult.
I get that, but we've all made mistakes at that age too. I have too.
That's true.
Like I said, at the end of the day, for him, he mentioned this on the video. If you watch it, he supposedly got his certificate, and the officer explained there was a difference between that and actually pushing it through. The other players, and the reason why they didn't get in trouble was they actually had their CCW. So because they had their CCW,
Eric Mitchell was the other one that had a weapon, and he had his CCW. So
exactly,
if Antoine Collier wanted to know, and one of the police officers said this, your buddy has his, so if you didn't understand the process, you probably should have asked your buddy. I'm sure he would have helped you out. So
yeah, and it's just unfortunate because as you said, he's been a great player. And if you do watch the video, you'll see him kind of break down because of the reality of the situation's kind of setting in.
And I will note that he was very respectful. He was very
100%.
Respectful, and he did exactly the right thing that he needed to do in this situation. He told them about the gun. He handed them his ID card. Everything that he did as the traffic stop happened was perfectly acceptable. I will say that.
The only thing I'll say is just if you have a weapon in your car, and if you're ever in a situation with a police officer, the right thing to do is disclose. However, do not start to reach for the weapon or retrieve it for the officer. They'll do that themselves.
Yeah, and quickly he stopped, doing that. So, but otherwise, besides that one little point that I wanted to mention as well, he did everything correctly and was very respectable, and all that. I just hate this for our program more than anything else.
Well, and I hate it for him too. And I today I tweeted out a clip from Nick Saban. Now, I'm not a big fan of Nick Saban. I think most of Knight Nation would probably be in that camp as well. However, he had a very poignant clip from a conference that he'd done, a press conference that he'd done a couple of I don't know if it was a couple of years ago, but he was talking about one of his former players who'd gotten into trouble, and everybody was telling him to kick them off the team and disown him and whatever. And I'm not advocating for this one way or the other. However, he took a different approach, punished the player, in different ways, but did not kick him off the team and mentored him. Instead, spent the time and mentored him, turned him around. He ended up being a 12-year NFL player and owns his own company and has 7 kids, one of the kids who's now in Princeton. So, if that opportunity had been taken away from that particular player, would all of those good things have happened? So, yes, this is a problem. I really have a problem with someone being disrespectful the way that they were to the police officers. Antoine, he made a mistake. He did what he was supposed to do. And I really hope in general, his situation turns out favorably for him. The other folks that were involved that were not as respectful as they needed to be to the police officers, they were obviously heated in the moment. That's not okay. And no matter what, you're a representative of the university and understand, just like me in business, I have a clause, and I've had this clause in each one of my positions in the last positions that I've been in. If I do anything that reflects negatively on the company, even in my personal life or off hours, I sign a document that says I am a representative of this company 24 hours a day, and I can be fired for cause if I do anything that would put the company's reputation in jeopardy. So this is essentially what happened here. So when you're talking about players not being part of the program anymore, it's the same thing for college football players. So these guys need to realize, even if they're let back onto the team for whatever reason or allowed to stay in school, you cannot do that because you're a representative of the university 100% of the time, whether you realize that or not. And so that's going to be the second part of this equation. So Antoine's got to deal with what he's got to deal with. You saw four folks didn't make the plane, and there's a reason for that. There was, it wasn't officially a suspension, and there's nothing been said about it. Heupel actually said that he would talk about that later, and kind of dodged the question for this game because I don't think he wanted to take the focus off of the win. However, at the end of the day, they're going to have some repercussions from that as well, and I hope they learn from it, because at the end of the day, if this was the business world, you'd be fired and you'd be out of a job, and then you'd have to tell the next person why.
All right.
So hopefully this is a learning experience for all of them.
Absolutely. And if one of these guys can be mentored, more than welcome to have that happen as well. But some of the things that were said were pretty nasty. But here is what Josh Heupel had to say when he was asked yesterday after the Houston game about it.
I think today, I got a statement that's out. Today is about the guys that are here on this trip, and I'll speak to that here later in the week when we get back to Orlando. We got a lot of guys that do a lot of things right. It's important you do things right all the time. Today is about the guys that made this trip. This is a post-game conference. I'll speak to the other things here early next week.
All right, so he was asked about it twice. And, I don't blame the reporters for asking, obviously, but I think that he handled it well. It's not the time to talk about it. And our players went out and played a great game and didn't deserve for all the attention to be on that subject, especially post-game. So I'm sure
they probably haven't figured it out yet either. This all happened Thursday night in the wee hours of Friday morning. So, they had to jump on a plane, head to Houston, keep the guys focused, and they were playing a game. And when you think about that, they're going to the team hotel, they're getting everybody situated, they're going over game film, they're doing all those things. They probably haven't had time to even discuss how to deal with it yet either. So That's a part of it too. But you're right, the reporters had to ask the question, and I think he did the right thing by allowing the team to keep the focus on the positivity and the win.
Well, thank goodness. It makes it a lot easier because of that police body cam footage, picked up everything that happened. It's one of the great things about body cam footage is it's all right there once those things are turned on, and it's very helpful in all kinds of situations. So in this situation, it will be extremely helpful. And it was good to be able to see that footage as quickly as we saw it as well. Congratulations for Night News for getting it. And props to the UCF Police Department for putting it out and being transparent as well. I think that that's very important. All right, on to football more. Let's talk about this game. I don't want to talk too much more about that situation. It's horrible. We'll talk about it more. There'll be a lot more coming in the weeks. There's already a bunch of articles out there if you want to read it and people's opinions and all that stuff. I wanted to give mine. I wanted you to be able to give yours, Roger. And, I hope this gets worked out as much as possible for these guys and we can move on. So we're going to move on. Josh Heupel was asked if he thought this was his team's best performance of the season.
Yeah, back-to-back weeks we've improved upon our 3 phases playing together, and told the guys in the locker room today, just, the energy and the look in their eye when they came down for chapel. And, then we go into our stretch routine after that, and just their body language at breakfast, and come back down for our walkthrough. Guys were into it, excited, and ready to take advantage of the opportunity. And I really am. I'm proud of the guys fighting through adversity this week that was a little bit different than anything we had faced here recently, and coming out and playing a really good football game.
All right. Well, absolutely true. I believe that in all 3 phases it was better, especially the defense. Like I said before, I was very worried that this was really going to hurt us, and it in fact made this team play better on defense. I don't know if it was that or just the injection of the new guys into the foray of actual game time. I'm sure that those guys get tons of reps throughout the week, but I think all those guys that got to play stepped up and really played hard.
Well, and the other part about it is a lot of the folks that have been playing, we've been seeing them play. So we've heard some of these names before, especially in the defensive back side of the field. We've heard Tatum Bethune's name before. Cam Good has been getting, game time sparingly. But especially in the defensive backfield, a lot of the guys, we've had Gaines getting time. Lester didn't play as much this time. We did have a new face in Devad Wilson. He had a few snaps out there. But we had Richie Grant. It's just Corey Thornton. He's been learning, so you've seen him out there quite a bit. And this game, if you watch Corey Thornton, was completely different. And we talked with Kyle a little bit about this later, about the concept of game speed and understanding everything that's going on a little bit better. These guys were all freshmen and sophomores. They have been getting reps. So if anything, and we talked about this at, on the radio show earlier this week, if anything, this is getting these guys ready for next season for sure. And they're already seeing a lot of improvement this season. So I'm excited about that and continue to watch them grow.
All right, here's what Richie Grant had to say about the new faces.
Those guys know, it's a situation that they got to step into and just go out there and compete. I told everybody just have no fear of failure today. Just go out there and compete, and that's exactly what they did. So I'm proud of them guys that stepped into the role. We had a new face, Devad, number 9, out there today. He stepped up big time. And, it was just an overall good effort by everybody.
An exciting thing, you mentioned it just a little while ago, Devad Wilson, finally, we're getting to see him, and that's pretty exciting because we were all just waiting to see him, so I think he did fairly well on the few plays that he was in there. Here's what Richie Grant had to say a little bit more on him.
He's one of the guys that can do it all, dime, nickel, corner, safety, wherever we need him. So just getting them locked in with our defense, because all of the calls and stuff obviously are different in a different program. Getting him caught up to speed with that, and sky's the limit. That man can play anywhere, and he'll be able to help us out tremendously.
All right. Well, exciting to have him finally. Roger, did you notice anything particular that he did that you liked?
Yeah, blanket coverage. One of the things that we were kind of wondering about was where was he going to play, because he was playing at Georgia. He was playing. And he's a more rangy defensive back. But I was watching him play and cover Houston's receivers when he was in, and he absolutely kept them. He was very physical. He kept them going towards the sideline, so cut off their ability to, have passing windows from their quarterback. And he just made sure that he was step for step with them and making sure that they had no room to catch any balls. So the few snaps that I saw him in there, He did great in our coverage, and the fact that he was physical. 2, he did the smart thing by using the boundary to his advantage, and 3, he just made sure that there was no room for the quarterback to throw in there. So I was very impressed because he was playing corner. He was playing dime, essentially. And as Richie said, he can play all of those different positions. So it was good to see him out there doing that because we've got a strong nickel in Aaron Robinson.
All right. Well, a lot of people were concerned about what was going to happen once they found all this out with these players missing the game. One of those guys that was asked about it was Dylan Gabriel, and here's what he had to say about if he was concerned that the defense was going to have issues missing those guys.
I wasn't necessarily concerned. I was just more excited for the opportunity for the guys to step up. That might be a opportunity. Obviously it was, disappointing for those guys, but a huge opportunity for the young guys to come in, step in, and go make plays. So, I try to look at all the positives. It was such a blessing for those guys to come in, be able to play, and then, obviously show out what they did, only allowing the Houston's offense to 14 points. I gave up, one of the 7. So, they played a hell of a game.
All right. Well, good to hear your quarterback talking like that about, his concern and not really having much of a concern, actually. Here's what Josh Heupel said on the defense in general from the other day.
It was our best defensive effort of the season. Told guys that in the locker room. The turnovers were big. Eric Gilliard early in the game, and then Richie there in the fourth quarter. They're in our close to scoring territory. Just some young guys had an opportunity to step up, and we talked about the DNA of the people that are inside the locker room, the competitors that they are, and the DNA of the program is when somebody goes down, the next guy steps up, and we talked about just how that's happened in the past since I've been here and opportunities, and guys stepped up and take the most of it, and really proud of the way that our defensive players competed and played today.
All right. Well, I think, you can take, in some situations, you can take a negative thing and make it a positive thing. And I think that the guys that were able to play this week definitely did that. And that makes me a proud Knights fan that they did that for sure. So that's awesome. Let's see here. Here's what Dylan Gabriel had to say about how the defense played.
Resilience, guys, being able to step up when their opportunity calls. I'm really proud of each and every guy that, just came in and acted like, it was their time and they were the guy. So I'm super, happy for those guys. Like I said, the win is 100% the goal, the main goal. And when we're able to do that, it's a blessing.
All right, here's what Greg McCrae had to say on the defense's efforts.
That defense is just amazing. They can do so many things and have so many great players on that defense. It doesn't really matter who's out there. They all know their job and their assignment, and they just come to work every day and practice, and it showed up today in the game.
All right, next we'll hear again from Richie Grant. This is one of my favorite clips from the press conferences yesterday.
Absolute domination. Exactly what we be asking each other for throughout the week in our preparation to go out here on Saturday and compete exactly how we competed today. Sure, we made some mistakes, but at the end of the day, it was exactly what we asked for.
All right, so I like that. Absolute domination, and that's what they did. So that's a good deal right there. Okay, Josh Heupel on the offense.
You look at the structure of what they did defensively coming into the football game, led the league in fewest amount of yards per carry, and structurally just kind of changed a little bit throughout the course of the game. We had some things going in the pass game early, and then we were able to run the ball with a light box, and our guys up front imposed their will. I thought our running backs did a tremendous job pressing the line of scrimmage and bouncing when it was the right time, but then getting back vertical. And they won a lot of one-on-one matchups in open space against safeties too that created some of those big plays. And I thought, throughout the course of the game, offensive line did a really good job. Obviously, a bunch of yards offensively, points not matching it early in the football game. We got to do a better job in the red zone. We're, I think, first and goal on the 2-yard line and end up getting pushed back. And the series just kind of unfolds right there right before halftime. But third quarter, we stubbed our toe. But you look at it, you're still putting up 681 yards of offense. There's a lot of positive things there too.
All right, a lot of positive things that came from the game. You could tell in that audio that the locker room was going a little bit crazy. They were having fun in the locker room, and that's especially after a week like it's been. To hear that in the background. I hate background noise normally, but I love that kind of background noise. That's the kind of background noise that I want to hear in clips. The locker room going crazy after a good win. All right, we saw another guy that we've seen quite a bit during the season, but I think maybe this was kind of a breakout game for Ryan O'Keefe. Here's what Josh Heupel had to say on Ryan O'Keefe.
I think Ryan, is a young player getting his first real time on the at the wide receiver spot, like consistently, has just gotten better and better every single week. More comfortable in the flow of the game, how it feels and how it plays out during the game. Just our tempo and seeing and recognizing, coverages and getting to the right spots and just executing at a higher level. He's done a really good job. He's got a great future ahead of him. He's just got to continue to keep pushing and working to get better every single day. But his ability to play at a really high level with Trey going down has allowed us to continue to play in our 4 wide receiver sets.
All right, and here is Ryan O'Keefe himself talking about his game.
I was looking forward to this game because, like you said, I'm from Texas, and this was my dream school, actually, before UCF, but they never, really looked at me too much. So I just really wanted to prove today, what I can do and why they messed up. But I really got to give all glory to God and my teammates. Without them, none of this would have happened. All
right. Well, Ryan O'Keefe, we've got something at wide receiver with Ryan O'Keefe and his speed for sure for the future. So very, very happy to see him have a good game.
Yeah, if you think about it, we were worried about losing Trey. Marlins picked up those pieces. Jalen Robinson has played really well, and now Ryan O'Keefe's coming out. He was a big star when we were recruiting him out of Texas, and we were just wondering when this backlog of wide receiver talent would start filtering in. And unfortunately for Trey, he had that injury to begin the season, but it's getting everyone more reps to be able to be prepared and really take advantage of what's coming next in between Gabe and Trey and all that talent that we've had. So excited for him. He's definitely fits the mold as far as the speed is concerned. The more reps he gets in and running his routes and understanding what that looks like versus different defenses, it's just going to pay dividends for us in the long term.
Another thing that really got going was the running game. Here's what Dylan Gabriel had to say on the running game.
The O-line running backs played extremely well. They dominated the game, and it showed. But I think it's just, when the defense comes out when they come out, and it's just taking advantage of what they're given. They're unloading the box, playing a lot of too high, and then backs are running really well, and then the O-line were protecting up front. So when you add that together, you saw what happened. Run game was killers today, and then, the main goal is to win, so that, once we get that done, that's all we can ask for.
All right. Well, another thing that Dylan Gabriel commented on, and I kind of like this, if you understand what he's trying to say here. Let me play the clip, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Yeah, we got, 3 home games. Super excited for that. If you know what I mean. Just being able to finish it at home and then be able to play in front of our fans, that is absolute great feeling. Knight Nation is just the best. They're best in the country. So it's going to feel good, but, this bye week, figure out ways to get better each and every day, and then obviously going into Temple week, get prepared and get ready to go.
All right. Did you get what he said there? He said that there's 3 home games, which obviously the game on the road that we have over
against the Cows.
Yeah, the West Florida Cows is a home game as well, of course. And I appreciate that he acknowledged that in the press conference. I thought that was great that he did that.
I think everybody at this point feels that way. When we first jumped into the conference, everybody didn't realize that, and then there was a movement, an active movement for people to go over there. Then it kind of got on steam, and now it's just kind of like the accepted norm. And how things have changed since 2013 when it comes to our relationship with the Cows.
Absolutely. All right. Here's what Josh Heupel said on what there is left to improve, or what he's going to try to improve next.
The penalties are still something that we can improve upon, a couple critical ones that could have changed the way the game's played at the end of the game. And it's fragile. You got to continue to be on the right side of that. We can be better there. Offensively, we got to do a better job of finishing in the red zone. Yards to points has to improve. For me, defensively, I got to go back and watch the tape, but I thought we let the quarterback out a couple of times still out of the pocket. We got to do a better job of being better there, in particular in third down situations.
All right, that is it for the clips. I actually got through all those fairly quickly for you all there, so that's it for them, and we can go ahead and talk more about the game. One of the things that was kind of worrisome, we've had a little bit of a problem in the red zone before, obviously. It really showed its head in this one. We really had problems. Thank goodness our kicker was on for the most part this week.
Yeah, I mean, in general, we still scored in the red zone. So if you're looking at red zone efficiency per se, I think it was something like 83%, which is still good. The challenge was we got to the 1 yard line, the 10-yard line, etc., and we're kicking field goals. Thank goodness our defense came to play this week, because if they had been playing like they were before, that would have been a real challenge for us and being able to win the game, because we've got to be efficient in turning those points into 6 when we get into the red zone. And that's been a challenge for us, given how we spread the ball. That's really not our game. And we haven't really had a good way until recently to run the ball in the red zone as well. So you've seen us get a little more creative in the double wishbone or T-bone or whatever we called it, and then now bringing in the tight ends as fullbacks. So we've still got to figure out a way, and we're still I don't want to say failing, but we're still not where we need to be when it comes to the red zone and scoring. We can score from 80 yards away, but when it comes to 20, it's a lot tougher for some reason.
Yeah, well, the area is a lot tighter, and you can't get as much space, obviously, between receivers and corners and everything else there. I do think that, I was hoping that we would see maybe a little bit of the bone formation or something like that down there, because we were down really close to the goal line, where that would have helped a little bit, just throwing a lineman in the backfield and maybe punching it through a couple times, but we did not. There was
on the penalties as well, because we had that one when we were down on the 2 yard line, and then we had movement, and that was on Dylan. Because he didn't let everybody get set, and then that pushed us back 5 yards, and then we got behind down in distance. So it's a lot tougher when you're. It's a lot easier to do when you're on the 2 yard line, and you can bring in a big package like that. Our challenge is kind of that middle area, and being able. We've got the fade route down, we've got the receivers for that, but what do we have going through the middle on slants? And I think that's an area of the game that needs to be developed a little bit, because our speed is only a weapon if we can create separation. And with limited distance, like you said, it's very hard to do that in a short period of time.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we need to work on the short running game, I think, a little bit there in the red zone, maybe getting tight ends involved in the red zone a little bit more. One thing that I noticed in the game, there was a situation, again, close to, or I think it was right before halftime, and we went for a field goal instead of trying to go down the field again. What did you think about that?
I think that was the right call. The challenge there was, we ran into this with Blake Bortles in the South Carolina game, but essentially what happens, or what could happen, is that when we try for that game, it's a running clock. So if we miss on that particular pass, right? So if we go back, we throw another pass, the time that we have that's left, it's a running clock. So you can actually, if Houston wanted to, they could come back onto the field, slowly get lined up for the, on defense, and take away the opportunity for us to have that extra down. So it's actually made more sense for us to kick the field goal at that point than it would have to try for another attempt, because that was a third down attempt, third down kick, if I recall correctly, if that's the
Yes.
same play you're talking about.
And I was completely fine with it. Just take the points and don't let anything stupid happen is what I was thinking. I was perfectly fine with it, but I could hear Night Nation grumbling a little bit, and I've seen a couple of things on Twitter and all that with people saying, negative things about that. But I just think that a lot of it's not understanding the game. So one of the things that was interesting about this weekend's game, it was on ESPN Plus. I know that there was a lot of panic earlier in the week with people trying to get ESPN Plus and all that stuff. I've had it since day one, and I love ESPN Plus. But sometimes in these games, you don't get the best crew, obviously, on an ESPN Plus game, and you don't get the best technical aspects of the game, and I think that was definitely something that was lacking on the broadcast.
I agree with you there. I mean, there's two parts to this in my mind, right? One is the commentators, which are provided by ESPN. However, the production, which is what I think was more lacking than even the folks that were calling the game. This was actually the first time that that the conference has this agreement with ESPN as part of our bump and our escalating contract, is that we're going to start taking over the production costs and the production of our own events, right? So in this particular case, it was Houston and their home game. So they were in charge of production and providing the production crew. So what they did in conjunction with the conference is they've contracted with an outside production company. And so the folks that are actually working the cameras and coming up with the angles and doing all of that stuff are from that outside production company. And from what I've been told, this is actually their first game ever doing a TV production. So when you have folks that have never done this before, paired with an offense that's faster than anything that's out there, and that throws down the field and moves the ball 60, 80 yards at will, you come up with what you have here with folks running off the screen and like all kinds of terrible camera work there. So I don't think it's going to be indicative of what our ESPN Plus experience is going to be. But this one actually wasn't on ESPN. This was actually on the American Conference and Houston and the production crew that they brought in.
Right. Absolutely. And I've run cameras before, and it's not easy. I've especially with sports, it is definitely not an easy thing. So it is what it is. I don't think we're going to have a ton of ESPN Plus games in the coming years. I mean, I'm sure we'll have some, but there's a lot of really great stuff on ESPN Plus, and what you saw was not the norm for ESPN Plus. It's normally not like that when there's an ESPN crew and all that stuff. So I'm giving props to ESPN Plus as that was not what you're normally going to see. So don't judge ESPN Plus on that. Take advantage, because a lot of you had to sign up for ESPN Plus. Explore it and see all the stuff that's on there. There's a lot of in-depth things on there. There's a lot of sporting events that you would never see otherwise. There's a ton of football on there. Games that you would not see on regular ESPN, and much more in-depth coverage as far as every sport on there, which is...
And the games themselves in about a month or so will be back up there. So if you want to watch it back, they'll be housed on there permanently that you can go back to it. And remember, folks, our basketball and our baseball will also be streamed on ESPN Plus. So this isn't going away. It's just... it's just a matter of getting it right, and there's going to be some growing pains as we take control of that production.
You're actually going to see even more American stuff. You mentioned baseball. You hardly ever get to see UCF baseball on any TV, and you will get to see more of that now on TV, and more basketball and tennis and all kinds of stuff. You'll see much more UCF material, so I think that's good. What else do you want to talk about here with the game?
Well, unfortunately, this game we did have more sacks, and we'll talk with Kyle a little bit about that later. But we did have 6 sacks this game. What was interesting this game versus last game, and we didn't get to talk about Tulane last week, we had a lot more designed run plays for Dillon Gabriel last week, and we didn't have any this week. And one of the other interesting things was we didn't use our screen plays. So when folks were stacking the box or dropping 8, what we were doing was we were going sideline to sideline and setting up screens to basically replace our running game. And also because we had injured running backs, and people don't realize that. This game, what that did for us, it actually caused Houston to have a spy on Dillon Gabriel. That has not happened ever all season in this game because he's not considered mobile. But he ran, I think it was 9 or 11 times last week. And that set up a spy situation, which brings one more person outside of the box. So if they choose to drop 8, or if they have a light box, if we're using Dillon as a decoy to bring another defender outside of the box, they're opening up the running game. And you really saw that this week in this week's game because Houston's defense was a highly touted defensive line that was really, really strong against the run game. And in this particular game, we played well in the run game, had over 300 yards. We had 2 guys with over 100 yards, and then another one, Bentavious Thompson, that was close to 100 yards. So with Otis and McCray back there doing that, that allowed us to control the game a little bit, and it was a lot more even. And when the pass game wasn't clicking, it allowed us to run the game. So little nuances that you're starting to see us build into our offense. And again, this goes into the narrative that we were talking about our offense being simplistic. It is by design in some ways, but there are wrinkles that are being moved in there that are actually affecting the defense in the following weeks if you know what you're looking at. Yeah. So just keep an eye on that stuff.
Do you think that, people say that Heupel doesn't adjust very well, but he's kind of planning for the future by adjusting the way he has with this offensive stuff.
Agreed. And this is something that, that Scott Frost talked a lot about when he was here, was he would set the same play and run it 2 or 3 times and just have one different look when he did that. And so what they were doing is basically training the defense on particular keys and then completely throw it off with a different look, slide somebody out somewhere else or have a different variation on it. What we're doing is that we're doing that on a longer term basis. So I think the criticism on in-game adjustments may be a little bit different, but the long-term game and watching the film and looking, that cat and mouse strategic play and setting up the opposing defenses, I do think we're seeing that because we're seeing small wrinkles every single game. The tight ends being brought in and almost what would be an overmatched 21 package because you have 2 tight ends back there with one acting as a fullback. That was completely different than the last 2 games. Having Dillon Gabriel run on RPO or designed run plays is completely different. And again, it's meant to loosen up and account for more defenders because if you have that, then that's less defenders that are open to defend space and allow your passing game to open up or your running game to open up depending on which poison they pick. This week against Houston, it was the screen game they were trying to take away, and they were trying to take away Dillon from running. So what did that do? That opened up the hole for our running backs, and you saw that. So if you keep watching these little tweaks week to week, set up the next week.
Yeah. Well, and also, teams are defending us differently than they did before. They're still coming up with new offense or new defenses that they haven't even shown before on tape. Almost every week, there's something, there's a new wrinkle in there.
Tulane did that last week. Coach Heupel mentioned that last week.
Tulsa did it pretty well. Memphis
Cincinnati
did it
last year.
Cincinnati did it, last year. So, yeah. And I think, though, that coming up with the things to thwart those defenses that they're throwing at us, okay, if you're not going to let us pass it, we'll just run it down your throats. I mean, that is part of, in-game decision-making, and that's what Heupel has been criticized that he doesn't do. And I think he's done a masterful job of it the last couple of weeks. Do what they're going to give you and take advantage of it. So I'm happy with it. What about the defense and the defensive coaching? What do you think about that this week?
Well, to me, they did remarkably well. They held Houston, and they didn't have an offensive touchdown till almost the end of the third quarter. The only score that they had was that fumble 6 that Dylan had early on in the game. So if you think of it from that perspective, it was a little bit different than last week. Last week we had 11 tackles for a loss. We had 15 plays where there were 0 yards for that play. This week we did it a little differently. We still got the pressure, and by pressuring the quarterback, we were disrupting plays. The cornerbacks played a lot better. They played a lot more physical, and our defensive style, and this is really where the coaching from Randy Shannon comes in, we're still playing all along. The difference is that the cornerbacks, even though they're freshmen and sophomores, are being a lot more physical off the line, which is allowing our defensive line to get into the backfield. And when they do that, it's not necessarily about getting that particular person down, although that we had 3 sacks. Richie Grant had one, Cam Good had one, and I think Landon Woodson had another one. So when you are able to stick to your receivers that way and take that away, or at least take the time to allow the pass rush to get to the quarterback, you're being disruptive one way or the other, whether you get him down or not. They're going to be throwing off balance across the field, et cetera, to an open receiver, or throwing it into disguised blitzes. Because if he's running around for his life and he's trying to throw the ball, he's not going to see that safety who's creeping up and getting that pass. You saw that with Gilliard in the middle linebacker, and I really want to speak to the middle linebackers. We were missing Gilliard for those 2 games that he was out. And when you see how Bethune's playing, he's in position more than what Tunier was in the past. And then you see how Gilliard is playing. He's playing that pass coverage and that soft zone a lot better than who we had there before. You're seeing good things happen, like interceptions, et cetera. So, when you're looking at it defensively, the coaching's starting to take hold. You're seeing them. You're seeing the guys get their assignments. Not as many people are out of position. If you're watching the previous games this season, especially Tulsa, our guys were completely out of position. And when they're out of position, the defense doesn't work, especially when you're predicated on a man coverage scheme and guys are blitzing from different areas. It leaves holes in your offense or in your defense, and that's what you've been seeing. So the coaching is coming through. The guys are starting to get it. The game's slowing down, and it's starting to work.
Yeah, 3 sacks for minus 21 yards. Richie Grant, Noah Hancock, and Cam Good were the guys that had those, and 6 quarterback hurries. Then tackles for loss, 5 tackles for loss for a loss of 30 yards, and then the 2 interceptions for 41 yards, taking them back.
So what you just did, they had roughly 80 plays, right, that the offense had. So what you did by naming those off, you took almost an eighth of their plays away just by that. So, it's a numbers game on execution, and they were coming in with a 30% third down percentage on their offense. So by taking an eighth of their plays away with good defense and tackles for loss and all those things and being disruptive, you're just limiting their number of drives that they can be successful. So they did an absolutely excellent job by playing that press coverage properly, giving the defensive linemen enough time to get in there. They did their jobs in getting back there and being disruptive, and that all limits the opportunities for them to win. And then when you get 2 turnovers, we win. We're 23 and I think it's 24-1 or something like that when we get 2 turnovers in a game. So 24-1, it is 24-1. 24-1 if we get 2 turnovers. We get 2 turnovers, we win. And you see the results.
That's good. All right. They had 79 plays. We had 84. We had 681 yards. They had 434 total. So that is that. Definitely, the negative plays and the quarterback pressures and stuff like that is important. We probably should pay a little bit more attention to see about those numbers, in the future. It's one of those ones that we don't look at very often, but I'm going to keep my eye on those a lot more just to see what happens. So
yeah. And, at the end of the day, too, it'll be interesting to see how our new folks like Devad Wilson impact that. I mean, we're going to miss, I will say this, we're going to miss Richie Grant. The man has 11 interceptions already for his career. He has 2 this season, and he's a hard hitter. So, keep an eye, enjoy Richie Grant while you can. He's going to be an NFL player, and, it'll be interesting to see who steps up next year to fill his role.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so another thing that was obviously focused on this week was special teams. What did you think about Orbowski? I think that he did a great job for the most part. Kicked quite a few field goals. I wish that he didn't have to try to kick as many field goals, but got some really good in-game experience for him as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, 3 for 4 with a 38-yard long. What was interesting this week, and I don't know if you noticed it during the game, but we did not go for it on 4th down one time this game. Now, that's different than it has been. I don't know if that's Heupel seeing something some progress from Obarski and his kicking, or if that's just him realizing that in tight games on the road, sometimes it's better to take the points. So either way, that's a change from what we've seen in the past. And Obarski was 3 for 4 with a 38-yard long as well. So he did relatively good on that.
Yeah, I think some of that may be, honestly, so I was trying to think about that as well. What is the reason for, having him kick some of those, where sometimes you could have easily scored a touchdown, or you could have gone for it, especially that 3rd down one with 19 seconds left in the half. And I thought, and I could be wrong, but not going for it and kicking field goals, you might want to give your kicker a little bit of confidence. He's had he missed that one in the Memphis game, it was the Memphis game. I don't know what I was thinking. Definitely the Memphis game. Okay. But why not give your kicker some confidence? Go out there, let him kick some balls, and let him score some points. I mean, he's going to have to do it. We realize that he's going to have to do it every once in a while. So you might as well give him the tries in actual game time, because it's much different kicking in practice than it is kicking in a game. I bet you anything that this guy is really, really good in practice. I'll bet you anything that he doesn't even miss in practice. But when he gets into the game, he gets inside of his head a little bit, and he misses some field goals. I will bet you anything. I've seen this guy kick, I think the one that he showed before he came here while he was getting recruited was 65 yards or something crazy like that he kicked. He was kicking in some competition, a Coles competition, I think, and he kicked some ridiculously long kick, but it was not in an actual game. You know what I'm saying? So it's really important for a kicker not to get in his head. You've seen it a million times in football when a kicker gets inside of his own head and he can't kick anything. It's kind of like hitting a golf ball. It's almost the same concept, actually. You're using your foot, obviously. But very important, I think, for Orbowski to get as many chances to kick as he can. You've seen the improvement that he made on the kickoffs. I mean, the kickoffs, for the most part, there was one that got ran back, I believe, yesterday. But for the most part, they were out of the end zone. So the guy has got the leg. He just needs to have confidence in his kicking ability to get it and put it in the right spot.
Yeah, it's all repetition when it comes to all that kind of stuff. I've heard from some kickers in the past. I've talked to Mac Laudermilk about this. I've talked to a few other kickers as well. And essentially what they're saying is, you've got to be automatic. You've got to get to a point where whatever you're doing, whether you're punting, whether you're kicking, whatever it is, you're not thinking about it. That's the last part you want to think about. The only thing you want to think about is where you want to place the ball, and then let it do the rest. And especially when it comes to place kicking, because when you get to a point where you're hitting a field goal. It's more about repetition and understanding how you need to kick a ball to be able to get it to go, no matter if you're in the center, if you're in hash distance. Some people try to out kick it because they're just trying to kick too hard and then they flub it. There's all these things that are going on, but the kickers just have to get repetition. And you cannot, no matter what position that you play on a football field, you cannot replicate game experience. It just doesn't happen. There's nothing like that pressure, that thought. When you're on the field, you've got the world watching, and in these guys' case, they're on ESPN. ESPN Plus probably didn't have as many viewers, but when he kicked that Memphis field goal attempt, he was on ABC for millions of people to watch, and I'm sure that's going through his head.
Yeah, you can't think about that. And in any position, it's important to make all of this stuff automatic. You can't think about it. You don't have time to think about it. We talk a little bit about that with Kyle coming up here in a couple of minutes with Dylan Gabriel and the way that he's making his decisions. All right, so we're going to take that break right now, and then we'll be back with Kyle Israel here right after these words.
Hey, this is Travis Dever, Kai's Real Estate, the Dever team, New Smyrna Beach. Your source for real estate and everything else, New Smyrna Beach. Proud sponsor of Knightline. Call me anytime at 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636. Let me show you my hometown, New Smyrna Beach, UCF's favorite beach. Go Knights and charge on.
Raising the bar on what to expect from your personal injury attorney is our commitment to you at Chad Barr Law. I'm Chad Barr, and as a UCF alum, I am proud to present Knightline at Night, Central Florida's only call-in show dedicated to our UCF Knights, every Tuesday at 9 p.m. And remember, if you or a loved one are injured in an auto accident, call us at 407-599-9036 to schedule your free consultation, or visit us at chadbarlaw.com. Offices Altamont Springs. Go Knights, charge on.
Alrighty, please welcome back Kyle Israel. Kyle, we won the game. That's the good part. The defense played a heck of a game, even though we missed a bunch of people. That's what I'm going to start with first. I want your opinion on this, and I don't know if you've seen the police video footage or whatever, but I want your opinion on what happened with Antoine Collier, because it's a little crazy, and I really didn't think that this kind of stuff was going on in our football program. I mean, kids are always going to go out and party and stuff like that, but the night before you leave for a football game in Houston, they're out at 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning, and getting arrested for having guns in the car. Would that have ever happened in the George O'Leary years, number one? If it did, it would have been handled a little bit differently, I think.
I think there's a lot to unpack there. First and foremost, as far as guys going out during the course of the week, even let's say on a Thursday night, I've seen that happen. Matter of fact, I've picked guys up for being too intoxicated from particular venues and places that were teammates of mine during the course of a game week. So I'm not too surprised about that. Do I agree with it? No. Do I agree with it, especially when we're dealing with COVID? I think that is what sticks out to me more than anything in this scenario, is that when you make those types of decisions, obviously in the state of Florida, bars are open, right? Nightclubs are open, lots of people there, most people not wearing masks. I think that is a very selfish thing to do, to put the rest of your teammates at risk, to put your team at risk by going out into an environment where you could contract the disease and bring it back inside your facility. That's where I take issue with this scenario. I think that I haven't seen any video, Andrew. I have read some articles, so I don't know what was said. I don't know how the interaction with the police went. I guess I'm glad that he admitted that there was a gun in the car and kind of avoided a situation that could have escalated. But, I'm also coming from a place where I received a DUI in 2009 on campus. It was after my playing days, but I made a really bad decision, and I paid for it. Not only with my reputation, not only with my family's reputation, I paid for it financially for a long period of time, and I put a lot of people on the road at risk, including myself. I know what it's like to do something that gets you in the newspaper for all the wrong reasons. Luckily, I've learned from that and have not done that ever since. But I'll comment on my opinion about the COVID and putting your players at risk. I don't know enough of the scenario to give you my opinion on how the interaction with police officers went, et cetera.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Well, you can, if you want to see that information, you can see it on Night News. They have 9 pages full of all the body cam video from the police. The police acted completely awesome. It was the players. The problem was there were a group of players in the car with Collier, and then there was a group of players on the sidewalk that weren't with Collier, but I guess they were following them and decided to pull over and get involved, and it just got way out of hand with those guys on the sidewalk especially. So
I think I need to be adamant about the fact that I think it's ignorant, ignorant, to go out in these type of circumstances. I don't care if it's game week. I don't care if it was 5 weeks before the season started, to go out as teammates to bars or nightclubs or parties or wherever you were coming back on campus at 2 a.m. Because of what's at stake right now.
Yeah, and it was a group
the ramifications can be.
There was at least 9 guys, if not 10. So I mean, that's,
COVID magnifies it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've picked guys up on Thursday nights before we've traveled to games that have called me intoxicated at Roxy nightclub or other places, during game weeks. Right. I'm not going to say any names, but I can tell you there were guys that were going to be big time contributors in those football games that we're about to play.
Right.
So that doesn't shock me.
How did they perform in those games?
That
you remember.
I really don't want to say names, but some guys
you don't just say any names.
Some guys had some phenomenal games, to be honest with you. They may have played better. But,
okay, well.
I just don't think that's very uncommon across college football. I mean, that was one of the reasons I think, and as a matter of fact, he stated it, that Coach O'Leary loved to have us, starting getting tape at 6:30 in the morning prior to practice, because you had to really think hard about whether or not you wanted to be extremely tired going into workouts or practices the next day. I know there's some programs that have practices in the afternoons or evenings, and that leaves a little more flexibility for what you do the night before. But Coach O'Leary's style, and they still practice in the morning now, but that's one of the benefits of practicing in the morning from a coach's perspective, is you force your players to really think if the pain they may feel the next day, either from a hangover or lack of sleep, is worth it.
Yeah, and I have no problem with anybody going out and having fun, obviously, but what happens between getting to there and back and everything else, and then with the COVID thing, it probably doesn't make much sense as well. So, all right, we won't talk about that anymore. Let's talk about the game. Roger, you got a question here for Kyle first?
Well, Kyle, the game itself was actually pretty exciting, and I noticed that the defense really turned it up this week. So what did you notice that the freshman corner defensive backs did right versus what they've been doing the last couple of games? Obviously, there's a learning curve there, but what were the things that you're seeing that are positives that we're seeing with these guys?
Well, I'm glad that I had a chance to go back and watch the game, because I didn't get to see it in real time. I had quite a bit on my plate for work yesterday, but I went back and watched it this afternoon. And, I think that they really understood what they were trying to get accomplished, and they were not putting themselves in position to get beat deep. And I think a lot of that starts with the technique at the line of scrimmage, really understanding where their help was in coverage. I saw some of those young corners really allowing receivers to funnel into other zones where they knew they had help. A lot of times you can kind of chase a player from, receiver from your zone into a zone that's supposed to be covered by somebody else. And then all of a sudden you vacated your zone and a running back or somebody working across the field, maybe from the other side, all of a sudden ends up in your zone. And in man situations, they were pretty physical. So I think, I don't know how many reps those young guys got with the first team early part of the week or even the last couple of weeks, but it looked like they knew what they were trying to get accomplished and what the overall scheme of the defense was. And that goes a really long way when you're young. If you can anchor in what is my job, then you can kind of let the physical nature take care of it. If you're doubting, what your job is or your assignment is in this particular coverage, then you're really playing a little bit slower than maybe what your ability is. And so I thought that they did a good job of anchoring in their responsibility and then allowing their athleticism to take over after that.
All righty. Well, the rushing game took precedence again this week. 170 yards by Otis Anderson, 107 yards by Greg McCrae, 87 yards for Bentavious Thompson. Each of those guys scored a touchdown. That's huge as far as I'm concerned, to get that running game really going, because we know that it opens up other things. In this game in particular, it was kind of the saving grace, the running game, because the passing game just wasn't on nearly as much as it has been in the past.
Yeah, I think that Houston was going to do everything they could to slow down our passing game. If you call 350-something yards slowing it down, maybe they accomplished their goal, but in most cases, that's not slowing it down. I think, for us, our running backs ran really, really hard. I thought the offensive line did a much better job of getting up to the second level. And Houston was really many times only had 6 guys in the box. So you're getting 5 guys body on a body. And the threat of Dillon running, which we've seen more and more over the last couple of weeks, makes that 6th guy in the box have to decide what he wants to do, if he's going to fold in on the run or kind of, stay outside for Dillon potentially keeping the ball. And I think that the big thing is the offensive line was able to win a lot of those one-on-one battles in the running game and get a body on a body. And then our running backs ran hard. I mean, they really, really did. I think I've been critical from time to time throughout the season saying that, our backs don't really finish runs falling forward, or maybe they don't have the size of some other running backs across the country, but they ran extremely hard. I think it's important to point out that they were, for the most part, all healthy, which is something that hasn't been the case throughout the course of the season. That we tend to forget how much that actually plays into the whole thing is their overall health. But the offensive line was a big factor in that, and I think that our passing game has created some of those scenarios where, our running game is still kind of this up the middle style running game. But we were able to get to the second level with our guards to the linebackers. And when you're able to do that, our running backs are skilled enough to break some tackles and break some arm tackles. And they did just that. And you saw some big gushing runs that really just funneled right up the middle of the field. And that's key to Josh Heupel's offense is to it's frustrating, right, guys? It's very frustrating when our running game's not working, because you're like, why are we just running it up the middle? Why isn't there more creativity? But when it's working the right way, and when you're able to get a body on a body, it can gash people, especially with our speed. And we were able to do that.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things that's missed a lot, because, yes, it's boring. It looks really boring. We have, it does look like we have 4 plays. But when it works, it really works. And we're not the number 1 offense in the nation for nothing. You know what I'm saying? Even with those 4 plays, if that's what it is. I mean, I know there's a million more than that, but it does seem like to the average eye, if you're not a football person, if you're just watching a game casually, yes, it could look like 4 plays. But to get that many yards and to I mean, this offense is prolific.
Prolific.
I mean, just amazing. It's record-setting, actually, and it could set some NCAA records if it keeps going the way that it's going. And I don't think people realize that. It's very close to breaking NCAA records.
I said this, I don't want to cut you off, and I'll be quick here. I said this a few weeks ago, but it's truly scientific. Literally, like
absolutely,
it should be like one of those ESPN's, science things, where how quickly we're able to line up. Like, our players' brains have been so trained that they know you get tackled, get the ball back to the nearest referee, or get it to the umpire, get the ball set, and get lined up. Our conditioning is phenomenal, and our ability to push the tempo is staggering. Yeah. I won't go in right now into Dylan's ability to make decisions in that quick of amount of a time, because we could break that down forever. But overall, from offensive line to the wide receivers to the running backs, we are so good at the play ending and us getting reset that it's
mind blowing
looking.
It's mind blowing. It is. It's just odd. One more thing I want to add before Roger goes ask another question again. 16 carries for each of Otis Anderson and Greg McCrae, which is kind of interesting. Evenly, Otis Anderson obviously came up on top of that with a 10.6 average. Greg McCrae had a 6.7 average. So that's just kind of interesting to me.
Those are incredible days for most guys.
I know. Absolutely. All right. Roger, go ahead.
Hey, man, you actually brought up a lot of really, really good points on your previous statement. And I kind of want to go back to something you said, where you said that we're doing different things to set up certain things. So one of the things that I noticed, Houston's defensive line was one of their very core strengths that they had going on. With Dylan running in the last couple of weeks, they actually set a spy on Dylan. And they used to do that with KZ all the time because he was a threat, which effectively, when you have 6 men in the box and you've got one that's got to spy, and you saw that a couple of times when he ran, that sets up and takes another person out of the box, which opens up that middle in between the tackles for the running game again. So I think that's super important to point out. The other thing we've been doing is we've been using our tight end as a fullback, essentially. We've been bringing them in. They're calling it the ghost play or whatever they're calling it. But essentially, the last 2 games, we've seen the tight ends come in, have a 2 tight end set, and then one become a fullback. So by doing all of those things, we're giving them multiple looks within the quote-unquote 4 plays that we have, and it's causing the defenses to react in a different way that helps us in what we're trying to do. Because this week, they tried to take away the screen game. So the way we've been offsetting the running game has been going to the sidelines with the screen game. Now, all that being said, which was a mouthful, but I just wanted to reiterate what you were saying, because it really means something when we're putting stuff like that on tape. You talked about Dylan and his decision-making. It seemed at times this week, and I know I've mentioned this a couple times in the past, we took a couple of extra sacks, I think, this game because Dylan wasn't making decisions as quickly as what we're used to seeing him. It didn't appear that we had a true check down, or at least that he wasn't looking for the check down. He was sitting in the pocket a little bit too long. What as a coach, what advice would you offer Dylan, or how would you coach him to make sure that he understands that he's either got to pull the ball and go or throw the ball away in those kinds of situations?
Well, I think some of it's situational, right? Down and distance comes into play right away. So, what do we need out of that particular play? And I would start there, because that dictates, how long you want to hold on to the ball. I think one or two of those sacks may have been on 3rd down, where he was trying to make something happen or at least extend a play. I think I would start with our offense. Like, it's not worth taking a hit. Like, we're able to get 6 and 10 yards per run with 2 of our running backs yesterday. And we're able to move at such a fast tempo that we always have the advantage. So if something isn't there, get really comfortable with throwing the ball away. Get really comfortable with getting out of the pocket and just letting it go. I think I would start with that. Secondly, I would show a film of Tua last year versus Ole Miss, trying to at the end of a half, really, with a play that didn't matter, trying to extend it and taking a hit that wasn't necessary. And I think that's the only thing that's going to derail Dylan right now is some type of injury, knock on wood, because he understands this offense so well. So I would really make him, truly understand the value that he brings to this football team and remind him that, hey, there's going to be plays where defenses get the best of us. There's not going to be some everybody open. And guys are gonna beat the offensive lineman one time. I think that's the one thing that you see is when you get these boxes that we were seeing yesterday and they're rushing 6 guys, it's essentially man on man. Well, it's hard for your line and either running back or blocking tight end to win every one of those matchups each and every time. So you're going to have some times where guys get beat, which is okay. It happens. But when that happens, you've got to go ahead and make a play keep it from being a bad play. And if you got to throw it away and get rid of it or escape and get a yard and get down, cool. But what you don't want to do is start scrambling around, holding on to the football, doing this little whirly 360 reverse, which he does make brilliant plays when he does those things from time to time. Don't get me wrong, but there's right times for that and wrong times for that. So I would just remind him of how valuable he is to this football team. And just reiterate the fact that sometimes there's just not going to be anything there. Either get rid of it, get a few yards and slide, don't take the hit. But the last thing you want to be, you start to get hurt as a quarterback when you're getting chased down from behind, or you're trying to extend a play and a guy strips the ball from you. That's when bad things happen. So have the time clock in your head. You got 2 or 3 seconds. When that time clock is up, either have a check down that you're going to. If one's not built into the play, get the ball out of bounds and live for the other play. I think, again, that's why down and distance comes into play a little bit. But it's hard it's hard to say that Dylan's doing much wrong right now from what you see in the statistics. But you don't want to take those extra sacks because that's really the only thing that's going to derail you as an injury.
Yeah, and he got up a couple times kind of slow too, which the first one especially, not the fumble one, but there was one, it may even have been in the second half or something, but he really got up slow and kind of was holding on to his right arm, which is, it's okay because his left arm's his throwing arm, but so 681 yards, and it was not a good day for passing. Only 328 yards. Overall, what did you think of his performance as a passer? We were talking a little bit more about running in that last little segment, his question. What about his passing efforts? What did you see?
Well, I thought he made there were some, great throws. He had a few deep balls down the field that he was able to hit. And I think it becomes challenging when you start to see 5 defensive backs on the field. I think we talked about it earlier this year in a segment. And when a defense is out there and they're dropping 5 or 6 guys in the coverage, it becomes challenging to find an open receiver every time, even with his ability to work through progressions in a play. And, I think we also got to realize that a team like Houston, who's very well coached, or most teams now, they're probably not preparing for us just Sunday through Friday. They've started to look at film week in advance, 2 weeks in advance, because they figure we got to find a way to stop these guys. So I didn't have many 300-yard passing games, period, when I played. We played in a different offense, obviously, so I try not to be too critical, but compared to what we have seen in weeks past, we didn't see as many of those chunk plays down the field. But I thought that, it becomes challenging when you have so many DBs working the field, and sometimes things aren't just going to be there. And I think it was a good point. That we just didn't seem to have that check down to go to yesterday when the stuff down the field wasn't open. If I went back and watched each and every pass play individually, I could probably get a better analysis of that. But I do think that, we're facing teams that are really trying to stop the passing game and forcing us to run the football. to slow to eat up more clock time. And there's teams they're going to do creative things to make it more challenging for Dylan to make reads. And I still think that for the most part, we adjusted fairly well. You would have loved to see us be more efficient, inside the 30 going in, because, we had to settle for a lot of field goals yesterday. That would be my only criticism there is got to be more efficient in the red zone in the plus 30.
Yeah, the red zone was definitely a big issue, and we can talk about that here in a bit. So Dylan Gabriel, 19 of 33 for 328 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's a really bad day for Dylan Gabriel, to be honest with you, if you look at his stats.
It is.
Which is funny.
Funny.
It's horribly funny because anybody else would love to have numbers like that, but for him, that's a really down day.
How many touchdown passes?
2. Only 2. Yeah. When he's, usually has 4 or 5, sometimes even 6. So,
right.
Only one receiver over 100 yards, 2 others very close to it. Ryan O'Keefe came out, though, really saw him a lot more than we have before. And he was the guy that scored the 2 the 2 receiving touchdowns. So, Roger, go ahead.
No, that's all good information. I mean, his season average is 64% completion percentage. I think that equated to something like 57. So that obviously was, and he had 7 less attempts than his averages for the season as well. So he had less opportunities and he did less with them. He also had
I'm being
6,
kind of facetious by saying that. I mean, I'm kind of joking when I say that's a down day.
No.
It is.
I think we have to put it in context.
Yeah, I'm saying it tongue in cheek.
Yeah, I mean, we have to put it in context. We're comparing Dylan to himself because he's essentially in a whole different league than everybody else.
Exactly.
So when we talk about these things, it's like Dylan versus Dylan, not Dylan versus the rest of the country.
And even with a day like this, he'll still be the stat leader on most of the NCAA stats.
He is.
Point. Yeah.
He is. He is still the stat leader. Now, you mentioned something about, go ahead. No, we were talking about the route trees. We were talking about the wide receivers. I was thinking about the route trees. We tend to push our wide receivers out to the boundaries.
Yeah.
To space everything out and spread it out as part of our offense, which doesn't leave a whole lot of room because they have a lot of levity on making decisions on what route they're going to run. That doesn't leave a lot of room to get someone back over the middle for a quick hit. So since we're keeping the tight ends back to help with the blocking schemes because we've got 5 on the O-line, what can we do to kind of take a better advantage of the quick hitters across the middle when we run into situations like that where Dylan's getting a lot of pressure?
I think motion can really help in those scenarios because we do have those wide receivers so split out. And if you know that there's vacated areas in the middle of the field, then being able to bring guys in on a quick motion where they can kind of turn vertically and then get into a slant or crossing route at speed where a defensive back is chasing them, then you're able to use those guys as hot routes over the middle to dump the ball off to. And we certainly don't lack speed. I think that's been displayed, especially even by Ryan O'Keefe over the last couple of weeks. So I think that's one thing that can definitely help. I think second to that is the play action game. And the play action game many times can bring linebackers up closer to the line of scrimmage. And that will allow, and I think we tried it a few times yesterday where we did a play action to the running back and then we're able to hit the tight end out into the flats. And the tight end getting out into the flats can really be a cure-all for being able to deal with blitz packages, et cetera, because many times if a linebacker is blitzing, there's not somebody there to cover the tight end or it's a safety coming down from depth trying to cover a tight end. So I think, really, especially when we have the guys very far split out, if you had Jalen or Ryan or even Marlon, in a quick motion scenario, coming across the middle, that could really cure some of that pressure from the inside.
All right, back to the defense. I think we talked a little bit about the defense in the beginning because we were talking about all the situation with everything that happened on Thursday night. But a bunch of new guys in there, guys that normally wouldn't play nearly as much as they did in this game, and they did really well. Probably our best defensive effort, which is kind of strange because 4 or 5 starters weren't even in the game. It was surprising to me. I think it was surprising to everyone, probably even surprising to them, especially guys like Noah Hancock with the sack. Other guys that we know are going to do well, but Richie Grant with an interception, Eric Gilliard with an interception. Quite a performance by the defense.
Great performance by the defense. I was happy for Noah Hancock as a senior to see him get that sack, and a guy that was looking for more opportunity for playing time and took advantage of it when he got it. But I think, one of the things that you see is many times coaches have guys playing because of a level of comfort, and you try to avoid playing the young guy because you have an older guy that is maybe not going to make mistakes or blow coverages, but you may be sitting in a film room throughout the week and go, man, our backup at this position is pretty freaking talented. Like, can't wait to get him on the field. Then all of a sudden you're forced to put those guys in, and they rose to the occasion. I think that, this isn't the Houston offense of years past that we've come accustomed to as UCF fans, watching them throw it all over the yard. They certainly don't have the talent, in my opinion, at quarterback that they've had over the last 3 to 5 years. Certainly from an athleticism and running perspective. And that was kind of the thing that's hurt us in the past, right? Agile running quarterbacks that are able to pick up first downs on 3rd and longs. Houston just not able to do that. So with the more stationary quarterback, relatively speaking, I think our defensive line was able to get some penetration. I think that Houston's offensive line didn't hold the front very well. And when you're able to get pressure, like I've said before, on the quarterback, it makes everything easier for the defensive backs. And I thought there was some great unison between front pressure, guys being able to play good when they were in zone and knowing their rules and assignments, which is a sign of good coaching, and guys being able to play good in man-to-man defense when we have blitzes coming. And so I think the combination of it all really, really played into our favor yesterday. And secondly, I think that we have talented young guys, maybe not as big or strong as some of the guys we've become accustomed to, but you walk away from that football game feeling really good about the direction of our defense, not only for the rest of this season, but for us in the coming years. And we know we've recruited some talented players at the cornerback and safety positions. So we've brought in some guys along the defensive front that probably need to get bigger and stronger and put on some weight over time. But let's face it. I mean, I think Tulsa has a very, very good quarterback, right? Transfer. Memphis has a 6th-year quarterback who we saw, kind of get shut down versus Cincinnati. But we played some very good offenses the last couple of weeks that gave us trouble. But yesterday we stepped up, and I thought that everybody played well. And sometimes when you have a situation like we faced Thursday and Friday, with guys sitting out, sometimes it can divide a football team, and sometimes it can bring a football team together. And I'm great that for us, it brought this football team together because we saw guys step up where they needed to. And it was literally a personification of next man up.
Exactly.
And we lived up to that.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Exactly, though. I think that they might want to note this lineup, starting defensive lineup, and I'm going to run through it real quick. Derek Gaines, safety. Anthony Montavo, defensive tackle. Cam Good, who had a great game, defensive tackle. Stephon Zayas, defensive end. Landon Woodson, defensive end. Eric Gilliard, linebacker. Tatum Bethune, Aaron Robinson, Devontae Brown, Corey Thornton, and Richie Grant. That lineup, and threw a couple other guys obviously in there doing some substitutions and stuff like that, but that defense did very, very well for the big names that were missing.
I mean, it's fun as a fan, right, to be able to learn about these new players. So it's really exciting to have guys that you see in the stat line whose names you don't really recognize since they've been recruited. And as they start finding their way onto the field, it's something that at least gets me excited to say, you know what, we thought this guy could be good, but now he had the chance to show us, and they proved it. And so, yeah, that lineup is definitely noteworthy from what they were able to do yesterday. And I mean, what quarter did Houston score their first offensive touchdown? I mean, was that
third quarter,
right?
Quarter, yeah.
So we held them scoreless through a half. That's phenomenal.
Absolutely. That's way better than we've been doing, because our defense has been getting slashed all year long. And then, it takes something like this, and then all of a sudden, whoa, wait a second, we have different players in our defense and we're better? Wait a second. It's just kind of weird. So
it's good coaching, and then it makes you scratch your head about, like, is that bad coaching because those guys weren't on the field?
Well, it makes me wonder.
Well.
It makes me wonder if maybe there's a little bit of stuff going on in the locker room, and maybe there's a little. It's good sometimes for new faces to be out there in a fresh breath. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if something is going on that people aren't playing maybe as hard as they probably need to.
It's a very valid question.
Yeah. So, I mean,
maybe they're all at the club on Thursday night.
Exactly. So we saw a lot of them were, and these are a lot of the players that were not in this game, and our defense plays really well. So,
correct.
Go ahead, Roger.
I was just going to say, I was thinking of that 50 Cent song and dating myself while we were talking about that. But no, I mean, to all of those points, I mean, Thornton played really, really well. What I was really happy with was the linebacker play. I think that's one of the areas that we've had an issue, and Tatum Bethune stepped in there and really did what we all had heard that he thought he might be able to do.
I've talked about real quickly. I've talked about Tatum Bethune a lot, and I love the way that guy plays. It was one game last year, I think, that I saw him for the first time come out, and I watched him pretty much that entire game. It was one of the first games, probably one of the first games of the season last year. And I was just blown away by the way that this guy moved and played both at the same time. I think that he is going to be really good, really, really good. And I've been saying that for a while. So excited to see him, get out there and get the reps that he did in this game. And I hope he gets a lot more because of it.
I think we've also seen guys. I don't mean to cut you off, Roger. I'll just make this point.
No, go
I think
right
what we've seen is that defenses have struggled across college football, right? I mean, we've seen a lot of defenses struggle this year. Most notably Alabama versus Ole Miss. But as the season's gone on, they've gotten better, right? They didn't give up a point versus Mississippi State last night. So I think defenses and the lack of hitting and the lack of contact that was taking place during camp really impacted a number of defenses across the country early in the season. But now that hitting has ramped up and guys are getting closer to game, guys have experienced a number of game speed scenarios, they're starting to figure it out. And I think that we've seen some of that with our defense as well.
Yeah, Roger, I'll let you ask that question again if we didn't cover it. I apologize for cutting in there. I just thought that it was important. We're trying to have a conversation, and I apologize.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's fine. I mean, the big thing to me when we're talking about our defense, and to your point too, Kyle, is that not only have they not had the normal reps that they would in the offseason, but we also have not had the tune-up games. Mm-hmm. So you don't have the FCS level folks. I mean, we went right into Georgia Tech, and I know they had played against us before, and there was a concern there. When you're I kind of would like for you to kind of take us through, when you're a new player, we always hear this thing called game speed that everybody talks about, right? And I remember playing, and I know Andrew does, but for our audience, can you kind of take us through what that means to a freshman or sophomore player, because effectively that's who we had out in our secondary. What does game speed mean, and how long does it take for you to really get up to quote unquote speed?
Well, that's a very good question. And I think there's a couple different ways to answer that. But speaking from my experience, I played very early on as a true freshman at UCF. I got in the game in the second game of the season versus West Virginia. I got in the game in the third game at Penn State and played a full half. I started a game versus University of Ohio. And it's hard to explain, but there is a different level of speed. In practice, are guys going hard? Yes. But, there's a coaching staff and backup players behind you, and the spotlight isn't on you. And I think game speed not only is just like the level of speed the guys on the field are playing at, but it also is like the entire circumstance, the entire context of what's taking place. Being in a game that matters, being on the field when there's no do-overs, being on the field where you can't afford to make mistakes. And sometimes that creates a level of anxiety. Sometimes that creates a level of doubt. And if you're playing with angst, or you're playing with doubt, or you're playing not to make a mistake, then you're not going to be moving quick enough. So as you get adapted to what's on the line in a game, and you start to establish that confidence, and your assignments, you can truly play with a reckless abandon. And as I got into my career, things literally slowed down. Like, it's a good example. Dylan Gabriel and his processing of defenses right now is a good example of what it looks like when you've caught up to the game speed. When the game has slowed down, the 3 seconds that you have to make a decision, or in our case, literally the 8 seconds, because of how quickly we're lined up, the lack of time to read a defense prior to snapping it, and then the decision-making process once the snap has taken place. Like, I think of it this way. If you guys ever been in a car accident, right? Or you guys have ever been in a situation where time literally feels like it slows down, like, that's kind of the same feeling on the field. Like, there's these moments in time where our brain processes things differently. 10 minutes in one scenario could feel like 30 minutes. 2 seconds could feel like 12 seconds. Well, when you've really figured it out, that 2 or 3 seconds may have felt like 10 seconds in the past, and flip-flop that. So I think the perception of time, the perception of what you're seeing, the processing speed that your brain is able to do and pick up, which is something that you can actually train for and improve on, all kind of comes into play. And that's why I said there's a couple ways to approach that. But literally, from a quarterback perspective, for example, once you kind of know what you're doing, and once you've been able to adjust to the speed of the game, it feels as though it's literally slowing down. And I think that can be said for a defensive back as well. Sometimes you get lined up, you're trying to think of what your assignment is, and then all of a sudden the ball snapped and you're reacting. Doesn't mean a guy's necessarily running faster than he does at practice, but the way your brain processes it is totally different. And I think all that kind of comes into play.
Yeah. So even more than football, that scenario for me is, I've worked in emergency medicine for a very long time. And I was involved in a situation the other day that we were doing something, and I thought that it was a lot longer than it actually was, because time had slowed down so much for me because of critical thinking. And I experienced that a lot in situations where you have to be cool. And it's the same thing. It's the same physiological or psychological thing as football, because you're making so many decisions so quickly that slows it down. I mean, and I know that you're working with things like that, with the brain and all kinds of stuff now, and I'm sure that that's something that you all, look at as well for metrics, I'm sure. So And we'll someday, I promise you, we will talk about that. We need to. I got one more thing for you because we've kept you quite a while on here. This is kind of an interesting question, and I thought of it when we were talking a little bit before. Is the defense becoming less important in football?
100%. I don't know if less important is the right word. It may be. But the game is changing where you just want to, before a bend don't break defense wasn't necessarily like a positive remark. Like, yeah, they're kind of bend don't break, but we wouldn't want them to be that way if we could choose. However, now it's, think of basketball, right? The game of NBA basketball has changed. There's so many points being scored that you feel okay about giving up a 3 here or there. Or you feel okay about giving up 6 or 7 threes in a game, where before that would be the difference. But now, in college football especially, offenses are getting so good and coaches are figuring out how to leverage space, leverage inches and feet here and there across the field, where, defenses are just going to be put in positions where they're going to not get the matchups they want. And offenses are doing a good job of creating mismatches. So I don't know that the defense is becoming less important, but what we consider a good or bad defense, that context is changing. If UCF gives up 28 points, but we win 55-28, well, our defense basically did what we wanted them to do that game. In the past, let's say in the George O'Leary era, we couldn't score like we can score today. So giving up 28 points, we probably lost the football game. It's totally just changing and evolving, which is great for a consumer product like college football is, right? And it makes it more exciting. It makes it more enjoyable to watch. And we've seen that in the NBA. And now I think we're seeing it in college football, where the game has changed before our eyes over the last 5 to 10 years. And defense being good doesn't mean that they hold teams to 7 or 14 points. A good defense that's accompanied with a very powerful offense can give up 28 points in a football game and be just fine, not only because we're accepting that, but secondly, because they're simply on the field more. And our defense is on the field more than they ever were in a George O'Leary era, because of how quickly our offense scores or how quickly our offensive drives are over. And so that's going to push more scoring in the football game. And we've got to come to accept that and just understand what we're looking at, which is a totally different game.
Yeah, and offense is a lot more exciting as well. So to most people, some people love the defensive stand. The goal line stand is incredibly, exciting and all that, but not nearly as exciting as the offense.
I go back and watch some games that I played in, and I'm like, man, I want to turn this off. Like, this is just so like.
Well, me too.
We didn't have Kevin Smith breaking 40-yard runs 3 or 4 times a game, it wouldn't have been exciting to watch. And so it's totally changed.
All right, man, we're going to let you go. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Enjoy the bye week. We don't have to watch any UCF football this week. Sometimes that's a good thing, just to have a little bit of a break.
I think this is a very timely bye week for our program. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. All right, man. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks. We're not going to do a show next week. Sounds good, guys. All right, take it easy. All right, good to talk to Kyle again. Always good information from him. Interesting, that last conversation we were having about defense not being that important in football anymore, or at least in college football. I'll be interested to see how that goes in the future.
Well, in this week, by the numbers, we'll be talking a lot about offense, and I think that goes to prove your guys' point, at least when it comes to UCF, although Memphis and also SMU's Shane Buechele are also putting up crazy stats, with Shane actually being right behind Dylan Gabriel in a lot of those offensive stats. So between those 3 quarterbacks in the AAC, that's a pretty huge deal. I
kind of wish that we played SMU this year just to see the two offenses go head to head. I think it would be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I agree. They ran into a buzzsaw with Cincinnati, so that kind of took a little wind out of their sails. But they won again last week, so I definitely would love to see Shane Buechele and Dylan Gabriel go head to head, because they lead a lot of the national statistics when it comes to quarterbacks.
And then, again, that makes this Cincinnati game looks more and more intriguing as it goes. We're going to have our hands full, but I think that Heupel has something ready for Cincinnati, so I cannot wait for that game. I'm rooting for Cincinnati to be, undefeated or in a great spot when we get to them. So I just have a feeling that Heupel wants to avenge that loss from last year.
Oh yeah, especially since they came out and told us that they had a specific defense that they built for us, and they'd been game planning for us all year. So I'm pretty sure that that Heupel took that as a personal challenge and will have something special for them this year as well. I mean, that defense is averaging 12, is allowing opponents and limiting them to 12 points per game. And they limited Memphis last week and SMU the previous week. So we're going to have our work cut out for us, but, we'll talk about that in my hot take.
Okay, what do you got for us by the numbers?
All right, so in the last 45 games, UCF has had 39 wins, 43 games of 30-plus points, which is extremely impressive, 29 games with 500 yards plus, and 3 600-yard plus games of the 6 that we've played this year, which is extremely impressive and speaks to those offensive numbers we were talking about. Coming into the game, we were averaging 45.2. That went down to 45 points a game, so that's good enough for 6th in the country. We're averaging 652 yards per game, which is obviously number 1 and is on track for an NCAA record. We had 681 this game. The last 3, now let this stat jump out at you. The last 3 games, we averaged 722.7 yards. That is ridiculous.
That's crazy.
92.8 plays per game, so just under 100 plays per game, which obviously is first. 417 passing yards per game. Last season, now comparatively, to think about 2019, last season that was 313. So we've gained a full 100 yards in passing offense between last season and this season. And that's without Gabe Davis. Now, you think about that. That's huge. That is good for first. This game, unfortunately, was only 328 yards. We're averaging 7 yards per play, which is up for us year over year. And in this game, we actually averaged 7.6 yards per play, which is 6th in the country. So super exciting stuff. As we mentioned, 681 yards of total offense this week versus 434. Now, Tulane, just to throw that in there since we didn't talk about them last week, only had 340. So shout out again to the defense for that. We were 8 of 15 on third downs, so that was 53%, which is a little bit down from Tulane, but is a lot better than it was last year. 2 turnovers this game, 13 for the year, and 2.7 average per game. So almost 3 turnovers per game that this defense is averaging, which is good for 6th in the country. We had our 4th 200-plus yard rushing game out of 6. We're averaging 234.6 per game, 353 yards for this game. I mean, that is a statement.
It's crazy.
In between 3 backs.
Yeah.
And that's good for 5th in the country. 400 plus passing out of 400. And this is our 5th 400 plus passing game out of 6, and that sets a new school record for us as well. Dylan Gabriel is the 3rd QB in 15 seasons with 400 plus passing yards, 5 TDs, and 0 interceptions in consecutive games. Patrick Mahomes was the last person to do that, so that should ring a bell for you there, Andrew.
Well, go ahead.
First
of all, when you're putting Dylan Gabriel in the same sentence as Patrick Mahomes. Now, Patrick Mahomes did not have the team that we have in college, but you see what he is capable of in the NFL, obviously. I mean, it's hard not to see it. Today, he threw an underhanded pass, which I sent to you earlier, for a touchdown in the red zone, which was crazy. I'm waiting for the time that he will throw one between his legs. Like, literally, I want to see him do a bounce pass or something, like, between his legs for a touchdown. I literally think he's going to hike a leg up and just throw one under a leg at some point, because he can do it. Right-handed, left-handed. Maybe he'll throw one with his foot. I don't know. Something. He's crazy.
Roll it around on his shoulder pads and then pop it up and then throw it to.
I don't know. Something crazy is going to happen. I mean, the dude does incredible things. So to have Dylan Gabriel in the same sentence, that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, if UCF fans don't realize this yet, this offense and Dylan Gabriel is one of the most potent in the entirety of college football history. We're not just talking about this season or amongst the teams. We're not talking about Alabama.
But Heupel only has 4 plays.
Yeah.
He's only got 4 plays.
And a lot of variations.
Yeah. But he's only got 4 plays. It's so boring.
Oh, man.
He needs to be fired.
Well, speaking of the season, think of it this way. Here's another stat to throw at you. Dylan Gabriel's the first QB this season with over 2,000 yards. He's at 2,500 yards in a shortened season, and he still has
2,506.
Yeah, which is ridiculous. And he leads in passing yards per game at 435, pass completions at 167. He also leads in TDs with 21 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions. So, I mean, you think about that. We have a quarterback who's leading every statistical category. Every single one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's phenomenal. Then we go over to the wide receivers. Meanwhile, Marlon still leads the nation with 59 receptions, 840 yards, and 140 yards per game. 140 yards per game.
This game hurt his average a little bit.
Yeah, it did. It absolutely did. I mean, he was 150 last week, but still, that's 140 yards per game. He's still the number 1 receiver in yards. You've got Jalen Robinson, who's our second leading receiver, at number 5 in all of college football with 709 yards. I mean, you think about that. We've got the number 1 and the number 5 leading receivers in yards in this offense, which is ridiculous. Greg McCray had 107 yards in this game. He averaged 6.7. Bentavious Thompson had 87, averaged 10.9 yards. And oh my, did Otis Anderson come back with a vengeance. I think you're seeing a healthy Otis Anderson now. 170 yards and a 10.6 yard average.
And he did it fairly quietly, too. Like, I did not realize that he was racking up the numbers until I saw the stats later on. I really didn't.
Yeah, he had some big plays. You kind of saw that last week against Tulane a little bit, but he's really, really letting it all hang out now. And I everybody was saying he was sort of missing a step in his burst, but it seems like he's caught that back up. And you saw him actually not running so much vertical. He was actually sidestepping and trying to do a few things to make people miss and then hit that burst. So. Yeah. I think Otis, what you're seeing is a healthier Otis Anderson, and he made them pay this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think he was injured or something. He was not himself for sure the last couple of weeks. So it's good to have him back.
But in general, the entire running back group is averaging 6.9 per carry for the season. 6.9 yards per carry.
It's crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah, 353 versus 165 passing yards this week. So Houston had 165. We had 353. Time of possession, we were back to normal, 27-19 versus 32-41. So none of those 8-minute drives from Tulane. 1 turnover for us. We scored on 8 out of 13 possessions, so 62% of possessions. We had 1 missed field goal, so that really should have been a little bit higher. We had a fumble 6 and 3 punts. So that 3 punts was a pretty big deal. Inside the 40, we were 8 out of 9 for 89%. But again, where we're where we're leaving points on the table is those field goals where we got 12 out of a potential 28. So less than half of the points that we potentially had out there, we actually took because we took field goals, and that was part of that red zone offense that we're talking about. We had 32 first downs this week versus 26 for them. That was 5 more than Tulane, or we had 5 more in Tulane, so we actually had 37 first downs last week. You can see that in Dylan's completions. However, that's still pretty solid. Third downs, 8 of 15, better than Houston's average. If you listen to our radio show, we talked about that a little bit. They were averaging 30%, allowing opposing offenses to hover right around 30% for their third down percentage. We were at 53, and they were 6 of 16 on theirs, which was good for 38%. So our defense did much better and had great really good pressure with those 2 interceptions. So that's what I had for you this week. It was we played better than what their defense was giving up all season, and obviously our defense came to play.
Alrighty, absolutely, yeah, man, unbelievable. All right, it's time for Roger's 5-alarm hot take of the week.
All right, so my hot take, and I kind of alluded to that a little bit earlier today, in the show, was I was talking about Cincinnati. They seem to be the folks, the creme de la creme this year in the AAC, but I'm going to take a little bit different take on them this week. I'm going to say that Cincy's defense gives up 38 points or more to us when we play them. So remember, that's a big deal because they've been averaging holding opponents to 12 points per game, and they absolutely demolished SMU and Memphis in consecutive weeks. So I'm going to go out on a not so big limb and say that we're going to put up at least 38 or more, which I feel will be enough to get the win. The offensive line has figured out how to play as a unit. That was tough earlier on. We've eliminated a lot of those penalties pre-snap, which was taking us out of down and distance and slowing us down, allowing the defense to adjust to what we were doing. The rotation itself has settled down, so we found our guys that are going to be there, and we found our replacement for our receivers. So one of the challenges we had this year was replacing Gabe Davis, and then also when Trey Nixon went out, O'Keefe, Williams, and Robinson are more than up to the task, and all 3 of those guys will be giving their secondary fits. And our running backs are healthy. One of the things against Tulsa and the more recent games, you notice that at times Bentavious missed a game, McCray missed a game, and Otis Anderson was also injured. So in between all of that, even if they're playing, they were still injured.
All right, good stuff there for sure. We'll see. I'm really looking forward to that Cincinnati game. I think that's the one that I'm going to actually go to this year. I know that sounds weird, but I haven't been yet. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. So we will see.
So we just have to beat the bye this week and then Temple next week, and we'll be there.
I think we got the bye. I think we can, as long as nobody else gets arrested, I think we'll win the bye week. If somebody else gets arrested, it's done.
Go 1-0, boys.
All righty. Go ahead with this, the Knightros Deep Thought thing, because this is interesting to me.
Okay. So one of the things that, I've been doing is trying to think about deeper level things. And one of the topics of conversation that we've had in Knight Nation recently, especially a couple of weeks ago, is Heupel's offense versus Frost's offense. So you saw some activity a couple of weeks ago on Twitter, and I meant to have this in last week's game or last week's recap. Unfortunately, we didn't have that last week. But basically, comparing the 2 offenses between Heupel and Frost, because you heard a lot of UCF fans screaming about Frost's offense versus Heupel's offense. So I wanted to do a quick comparison. So I've got a couple of quick notes on here, but I think it would behoove us, Andrew, also just to kind of talk about what the differences between the 2 are. So some small, real quick points. Frost's offense used smaller or thinner linemen that used a lot of twists and things like that to try to create a second line for the running backs to follow through. So what he'd do is he would recruit thinner speed guys. He'd run a lot more plays. He'd try to run your running back sideline to sideline to wear out the defense. He had a little more complexity in his schemes. He'd play a lot of 2-back sets, 21 personnel, versus what Heupel does, which is a single-back set or 11 personnel. And what he'd do is he'd use a lot of pre-snap movement. He'd use his offensive linemen to twist to get to the second level, and he'd try to scheme 2 to 3 offensive linemen to be in that second level and the running back to follow after he'd set them up with a similar play and basically lulled them to sleep. So it's he also relied a lot more heavily on the RPO, on a QB running the RPO, because the idea was you had a 3-headed monster. You had either one of the running backs could get it, and then you also had someone in Mackenzie Milton or anybody that in his vision of a quarterback could keep, depending on what the keys were being given to him, to the QB by the defense, and also be a runner. So that means that they had to have 3 people assigned in the box at any time to watch those 3 guys, and that opened up space for the rest. The other thing that he would do is by running sideline to sideline, that also opened up dumping the passes and tiring out the defense, so that you could get the small, nimble backs, the scat backs, for lack of a better term, in space and make them miss guys. So the Otis Andersons, the AKs of the world. Heupel runs things differently. So he isn't using a lot of pre-snap movement. So his advantage and his lethality is in the speed of the play clock. So he's going to wear you out by the sheer number of plays that he's running, and he's going to run them in between 6 and 8 seconds, which means there's a simplicity in the way that the formations are set up. They're all pretty similar. What's different is how he uses those personnel, and he'll put small wrinkles, and we kind of talked about that earlier. He also wants to run inside the tackle, so he's not going to wear you out by running sideline to sideline. He's going to hit you with the sheer number of plays and getting you out of position when they're hitting you with those plays. So what you're seeing now is he's starting to blend in some QB runs and using the middle more, because the way that we've attacked defenses is by spreading them out. So we're putting our receivers as far out to the boundaries as we possibly can to spread out the amount of space that they have to cover, and then utilizing and hopefully pulling them out of the box, those safeties and those other defensive backs, pulling them out of the box to try to cover and limit the amount of time that they can get back inside the box and react to the running game. So he's also going to be using not only more simplicity, but he's trying to get one-on-one matchups, not by confusing the defense, but just simply spreading them out and then tiring them out. And so you're seeing a lot more deep ball air raid type one-on-one matchups on the outside and chunk plays with less setup. So it's a completely different way to achieve the same thing. And so, yes, the initial setup of the offense has to be simple if you're going to get a playoff every 6 to 8 plays or every 6 to 8 seconds. However, there is complexity in the way that the spacing is set up and in the way the wrinkles that he's layering into what we're doing. So I just wanted to give a little bit of a compare and contrast between the two things. And, with Frost's offense, because he was trying to set up plays later on, it would take longer to get to them. But then you would see us take off in the second half because, 1, he'd worn out the defense, and 2, the plays that he had set up before, he would hit for a deep hitter. Whereas Josh Heupel, on the other hand, is not doing that. He's spreading them out at the beginning, trying to hit them with speed right off the get-go, and then getting those one-on-one matchups wherever he can. So that was just my quick synopsis, and I'll shut up now.
It's unfortunate that this season is going to be a short season compared to a normal schedule, because it will be kind of hard to compare. I was looking back while you were talking on stats from, the Frost years to the Heupel years. this season, obviously, things are a little bit different with Dylan Gabriel, really going and really playing to an extreme level. But since it's a short season, he won't be able to rack up the stats that you would have in 12 games. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So unfortunately, this year is going to be weird with that because I was looking at 2017 with Milton. Milton threw for 4,037 yards. I guess this probably counted 13 games with the because I think they probably counted the bowl game as well. So that's kind of a bummer that we can't compare that. But if you go back to 2018, Milton, I think, missed 2 games out of that. Well, he was out another one with that Memphis, or was it Memphis that he didn't play? It was East Carolina or something that he didn't play.
It was ECU.
Yeah. That year he threw for 2663. And then, of course, missed a couple games at the end of that. Dylan Gabriel threw for 3,653 last year, and already he's got 2,506. So, yeah, I wish that we had a full season this year so we could actually compare a little bit easier, but we don't.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at the per game for passing. The other part to look at, too, with Mackenzie Milton is rushing and how much rushing he was doing. So Dylan's just recently added that to his game. You saw that last week where we saw a lot of called plays for him and more RPO type runs and designed runs for him. But I think what you're going to find, one, is they're getting more plays in, which means he should be he should be racking up more yards. It's going to be the yards per pass that we would want to look at, yards per play, and then also how much running KZ was doing as part of that, because we had the running backs, but we also had him as a runner on that RPO offense.
I guess we could average in some hypothetical games if we wanted to get close, with the averages or whatever. In 2017, McKenzie was the second leading rusher, by the way, on the team at 106 attempts and 613 yards. So that made a big difference as well. Not in the passing yards, obviously, but definitely made a big difference. So
absolutely, and
I don't remember
Dylan's not doing that.
I don't remember ever Scott Frost's offense being even talked about as setting NCAA records, though. Am I wrong? I don't ever remember that.
No, points per game. There were some conversations around points per game, but not yards per game.
Right. So I would be interested to see what the efficiency of the offense is, the difference in the efficiency between Heupel's and Frost's. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I'm going to guess that Heupel's is just off the cuff, and we can test this. I'm going to guess that Heupel's is going to be more efficient because he's trying to score, or he's not trying to wait around and use trickeration, for lack of a better term, to set up the second half. He's also not relying on people just getting tired based on running sideline to sideline to set up for the second half, because Frost's offense is, they'd get out on the first quarter, they'd hit a certain number, that he'd get to. Then the second quarter, the defense would adjust. The third quarter, midway through the third quarter, they'd hit the go button, and then all of a sudden you turn around and there's 50 points on the board. So, it's different because it's a different approach and a different way to get to the same goal with Heupel's offense. So I'm going to say Heupel's offense is probably more efficient, but I'll look at some. We'll have to take a look at some efficiency ratios.
Looking back at total points per game, 2017 was 48.2, and we're at 45 right now. Last year we were at 43.4, so a little bit different. 43.2 in 2018. So yeah, it's pretty interesting to look at that kind of stuff as far as that goes. Exciting. I like it. I mean, I know I've been a Heupel bandwagon guy the entire time. I love this offense. I know it's boring. I know that it's not as flashy as Scott Frost's was, but I love what they do with it. I love how fast they can score points. I think it's extremely exciting. I just wish, again, this year that we had a full season to actually compare this stuff with. But we're not going to. So 2020 is gonna have an asterisk in many, many places. So, all right. I guess pole position. We should probably do that, even though we're not in quite the right spot.
Welcome to this week's pole position.
And on this week's pole position, unfortunate news to report. Last week, we were up to 13 votes in the coaches' poll, and for some inexplicable reason, we're down to 1. And the AP vote, we're still not receiving votes. So unfortunately, for some reason, despite beating Houston, which had 2 votes last week, we somehow dropped 12. So can't quite compute the math.
Happen,
yeah, that's just weird. And then Cincinnati this week was ranked number 6 in both the coaches and the AP poll. Knights fans, that's where we wanted to be this year. But the good news is, hopefully that is setting one of us up for a college football playoff review until we, beat Cincinnati, knock them off their berth, and that may be a path for us to get into the top 25 by year end.
All righty. Well, good stuff there with all that the stuff that you were just talking about. We need to take a break, and then we'll be back with Ask Knightline when we continue Knightline 241.
I'm Jeff Allen. Join me each and every week on the Knightline Sports Network for the AAC Report. We bring you in-depth coverage of each school in football, basketball, baseball, softball, soccer, golf, tennis, and more, as well as bring you insider interviews and focus in on the biggest games and news of the week. That's all right here each week on the AAC Report, only on the Knightline Sports Network.
Hey, Jeep Wrangler owners, have you ever sat in your office at work and watched the rain just pour into your Jeep because the weatherman said that there was a 0 chance of rain? Or you put your doors back on because there was a 100% chance and then not a drop of rain fell? Well, there's a company out there that can help take the worry away and give you the peace of mind to be without your doors. The company's called Life Without Doors. They make waterproof rain curtains and dash covers for Wranglers. Life Without Doors is there to help make the decision to leave the doors at home an easy one. Find out more at lifewithoutdoors.com.
Spice up your company with homemade marketing services from Tasty Gravy Creative. Tasty Gravy serves up a menu of budget-friendly marketing, graphic design, and public relations services customized to your specific goals. Co-owned by a UCF graduate, Tasty Gravy can help refresh your brand, strengthen your online presence, or reinforce your company's message. Contact Tasty Gravy for help with your website, social media, marketing, advertising materials, and more. Visit tastygravy.com.
Ask a Knightline is brought to you by Chad Barr Law. Chad is a UCF alumnus and diehard Knights fan. Chad Barr Law handles auto accident, slip and fall, and personal injury cases. Call Chad today at 407-599-9036 for a free consultation. That's 407-599-9036. Armor up and call Chad Barr Law today. All right, time again for Ask Knightline, where we're answering your questions that you posed on our Facebook page or our Twitter page at #AskKnightline. A couple that we're saving back from last week since we did not do a show. I apologize. Things come up sometimes and we just can't do it. So we did it this week. We're even doing an extra long one. So I'm going to try to work a couple of these in that are still relevant from last week. The ones from this week, though, I'll go first. What are your Golden Knight 2 asks, what are your thoughts on the defense stepping up despite losing the 4 starters. We've talked about that quite a bit, I think, during the show. But unbelievable, and I'm so happy that it happened. I was very, very worried about it, and props to those guys that did step up and played like starters. I think that's awesome. And then Brian W. Peterson asks, is our defense better off starting the guys we started at Houston instead of the starters who were out of the game? We played really well. We probably played our best defensive performance of the season, except maybe if you went back to the Georgia Tech game. I think overall, though, this last game would have been our best defensive effort. I mean, we held them to really not scoring offensive touchdowns until the third quarter. It definitely gave a spark with these guys being in there. Maybe it was that they, had something to prove, that the other guys, you start for long enough on a football team, you don't have nearly as much to prove anymore, and you get lackadaisical. And I think sometimes, and I think that may have happened here. So I love that these guys stepped up, and I would definitely, play this going forward. I mean, I'm sure that there's some reasons not to, but just for the fact that these guys got involved in stuff that probably wasn't a good look, and then the defensive players that did step in their positions stepped up well, heck yeah, play this defense. This is the starting lineup that I'd like to see. What about you, Roger?
Well, for me, I think they played well enough to earn the ones. And as long as they play well enough to earn the ones and they prove it, I think they stay in as the ones. I think what you saw was a lot of improvement by some of the younger guys that are catching up to game speed. And, the other guys that are not playing, we didn't play any worse. So to me, they've made good decisions. They've earned the right to play as the ones, and until they're unseated or do something in practice that we're not seeing, and the other guys who may have had to take a break are welcomed back, then keep them as the ones. I mean, they clearly played well enough to start.
Yeah, and they may have to be the ones too. I mean, just because those other guys are some of them may be gone. So, okay, I did say that was from Brian W. Peterson, correct?
You did.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. UCF Selena asked a question. Could the second half decline, this was from last week, could the second half decline be the result of conditioning? Would the lack of preparation during the offseason impact a fast team like UCF more than other teams? I would imagine the conditioning is so important for a team that runs darn near, I like that, darn near 100 plays a game. This season is different than any other season, period. It's like I've said before, it's going to have a lot of asterisks. A lot of things didn't happen. There wasn't the spring ball. There wasn't the normal fall ball. Of course, there's some kind of conditioning things. I don't personally know if that's what, brings on the second half decline. I think that the brakes get put on a little bit in the second half, especially with the offense. I think, I think this is one of Heupel's things, and he tries to, play it a little safer sometimes in the second half, especially when we've got a big lead, and I don't blame him for that at all, personally. But, of course, conditioning when you run almost 100 plays a game is a big deal. I think, farther and farther we get into the season, I don't think it's as big of a problem, except for injuries start to pile up. But I don't really think that's why we're having, second half lulls a little bit. I think that they may be losing a little bit of energy when they go in for halftime or whatever. It's a stop in the game. It's taking your energy level from one, half to another half. I guess. I don't know. I don't really know. I guess is what I'm saying. Roger, would you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I'd like to tag on to that one. As far as conditioning is concerned, I don't think it's a case of conditioning. What I do think is we have to acknowledge that there are other Division I college coaches that are on the opposing sideline, right? And we had like to think and tout that we had 4 ranked teams last year in the conference that we play in. So I feel like what you're seeing is a combination of what you mentioned, Andrew, where we do take our foot off the gas, and we have to learn how to do that, just as we had to learn how to go at 6 to 8 seconds in the clock. We have to learn how to slow it down. You saw that in Tulane a little bit when we did the 8-minute offensive drive, but I think it is a combination in the third quarter. We get ahead to these 2 and 3 score leads, and Heupel does pull the foot off the gas a little bit to try to burn clock. And, when you're thinking about it, we should do that, but we haven't learned how to do that yet. And we've gotten a little bit better at that in the last couple of games. I think that's part of it. And I think the other part is people are making adjustments. I mean, these are highly paid, multi-million-dollar football coaches that, if we like to think of ourselves as a P6, we've got good talent, and those guys are going to make adjustments, and we have to figure that out too. And that takes about a quarter to do that. So that's what I think you're seeing more than anything else, and less about the conditioning.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. One from CA Crush. Who are our kickers? How is the depth? Not intending to be disrespectful to Arbowski, but he seems to be the only kicker we use. Well, that's normally the way that it goes. You usually only have one kicker. In the last couple of years, I guess, or last year, we had Arbowski kicking off, and then, our other kicker kicking field goals. We do have another kicker on the roster, at least one, Riley Stevens, a freshman from Dr. Phipps from Orlando. I'm trying to look through the roster very quickly and see. I think those are the only two. You normally only have a couple kickers. So I do remember that this kid has a little bit of a leg as well. But, you bring a guy in like Orowski, you need to give him the time to do his job. He needs to learn. He's only a sophomore. It happens. We've been very lucky at UCF to have the kickers that we have the last couple of years. So it doesn't shock me that we've gone through a little bit of a learning curve with those guys. But I'm telling you, by the time he is a senior, or by the time probably he's a junior, you've all seen that freshman to junior, or freshman to sophomore to junior, getting I don't know
that
word.
Jump.
The jump, yes. Sorry, thank you. I was like searching for a word there, which I do normally because my brain is like super flighty. Anyway, you're gonna see a jump with him. I seriously think that this week, even with having him kick a few more field goals when we probably could have gone for it on fourth down, was to get him some game time, and get him in real situations. I really think that was part of the thing. I hope somebody asks Heupel, about that maybe this week during his press conferences. I think they're going to be talking about other stuff, but it would be interesting to see what he thought about that. Absolutely. Thank you for your question. And then Brian W. Peterson, do you see us being back in the top 25 at the end of the season? If we beat Cincinnati, I know it's a big if. They're number 6. There should be no reason, if we beat number 6 being unranked, that we can't get back up in there.
So the big question for me,
should
though,
at least be
is
25.
The big question for me, though, is do we just want to be top 25, or do we want to compete for the conference championship? Because the scenario I see where it would happen is either Tulsa loses, or I'm sorry, they continue to win. Tulsa continues to win, and we beat Cincinnati, right? And here's the reason why. In order for us to make it to a potential conference championship game, because we're still in the running technically. I know the odds are long, but it's the AAC, and it's happened before.
And it's the best two teams this year. It's the best 2 records because there are no divisions.
And that's the tough part of this. So in order for that to happen, Tulsa has to lose, right? And if Tulsa loses, then that diminishes our chances for ranking. They are getting somewhere around, I think, 70 votes or so. So they're climbing in the rankings. If we beat Cincinnati and Tulsa loses, then I don't think we get there. If Tulsa keeps winning, which is bad for our conference championship chances, and we beat Cincinnati, then I think that we have a real chance to be in the top 25 by year end, especially if Cincinnati is the representative for us in the New Year's Six Bowl and wins that bowl.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we shall see how this all folds out. It's going to be interesting for us to get there. A lot of things have to happen. We just have to obviously win out and see if some other people can, help us out a little bit. It's just one of those situations. It is what it is, folks. Thank you very much for your questions. We really appreciate it. I'm sorry again that I asked for questions and then we didn't do a show last week. I apologize because I really love that you guys ask us stuff, and I could see why you wouldn't want to ask if you didn't know. So anyway, we will not be doing a show next week, so I will not be asking for questions. I will be out of town, and it's a bye week, so there's no real reason to go through a recap. All right. Hang on through these two commercials here real quick, and we'll be right back on Knightline 241. Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley reminding you to tune in every Tuesday night, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app for Knightline at Night. Brought to you by Chad Bar Law. We'll be taking your calls and your texts reacting to the previous week's UCF sports action, and you never know who will show up. Once again, that's Knightline at Night, every Tuesday, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app. Go Knights and charge on.
Welcome. This is a promo for the Take a Left at Albuquerque podcast, new to the Knightline Sports Network. You should listen to it. I say things like this. We need to stop blaming Jerry because we would do the exact same thing if we owned the Dallas freaking Cowboys. Do you know how much fun it is to own the Dallas Cowboys? My guests will say things sometimes like this.
It's the Lord of the Flies thing that happens when they don't understand that things are wrong, spoiler alert, until Piggy dies.
Lord of the Flies has been out for like 100 years. I don't even know.
Sorry to everyone at home who I spoiled the book for. A book's been out for like 90 years or something.
And sometimes, rarely though, I'll say really stupid things like this. If they don't make it out of the West and the Raptors get to the finals, I will go on either this show or whoever's show and say that Kawhi Leonard is overrated because I have too much evidence of it. New episodes drop every Friday with me and some of my good friends right here on the Knightline Sports Network.
And now, news and notes from the world of UCF sports.
UCF will serve as the institutional host for multiple 2023 NCAA championships, including a unique tennis event to be held at the USTA National Campus in Orlando. The 100-court USTA facility will serve as the venue for all 6 tennis championships in 2023. It will mark the first time in NCAA history that men's and women's championships in all 3 divisions, 1, 2, and 3, of the same sport are held at the same time in the same venue. The NCAA also awarded 2023 NCAA Men's Basketball Championship first and second round games to the Amway Center in downtown Orlando. The Amway Center also played host to the NCAA first and second round men's basketball games in 2014 and 2017, and the Amway Arena was the host location in 2004. UCF joined the Greater Orlando Sports Commission in submitting bids for these events since 1997. Go Sports has hosted at least one NCAA national or regional championship every year.
All right. Good job on that. Hopefully I can get through this one. In the annual American Conference men's basketball preseason poll voted on by the league coaches, UCF was predicted to finish 8th of 11 teams in the conference for the upcoming 2021 season, announced on last week sometime. It says Wednesday, but I think this is a little bit old. The Knights finished last season 16-14 overall and 7-11 in the AAC action, tying for 8th with rival South Florida. Boo. Moo. In league standings. UCF returned 6 lettermen off of last year's squad, all of whom started games during the 2019-2020 campaign. Darren Green leads the way after averaging 10.1 points a game and leading the AAC in both 3-point field goals made and 3-point field goal percentage as a true freshman. The Knights also add VCU transfer forward Sean Mobley, Louisville, I'm messing this all up. Louisville transfer guard Darius Perry, and Oregon transfer forward C.J. Walker to the mix for the upcoming 2021 campaign. Walker is still awaiting a waiver to be able to play right away for UCF, and I hope that happens. That'll be very big. Houston, which tied for first in the league with Cincinnati and Houston last season, was picked to win the 2021 again. The Cougars had 9 of 11 first place votes. So that's that. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. We made this a little longer because we were not here last week. So I appreciate you tuning in. I'm Andrew Phegley.
And I'm Roger Phipps. Go Knights!
Charge on.
UCF, charge on to the field.